The sound of the restaurant was the only thing keeping me steady that night. The hum of soft jazz, the clinking of glasses, the low murmur of conversations blending into a kind of fragile rhythm I could hide inside. My name is Elena Rossi, and I had spent most of my 24 years trying not to be noticed. At La Vigna, that was easy. The waitresses moved like ghosts between tables, carrying plates of food for people who lived in another world. I told myself if I stayed quiet, invisible, and careful, I would survive the night. But the universe has a cruel sense of timing. My hands were already trembling when I reached for the glass of red wine. The table belonged to a group of men who carried the kind of confidence that comes from fear, not respect. Their laughter was low, controlled, and wrong somehow. The man at the center of it all sat still, untouched by the noise around him. His suit was dark, his eyes unreadable, and when I caught his gaze for the briefest second, I felt something inside me hesitate. That was Dante Moretti, the name whispered behind closed doors, the man you did not look at for too long. The glass slipped before I even knew I had lost control. The crash was sharp and final. Scarlet wine spread across the white tablecloth, bleeding like an open wound. My breath caught in my throat as I froze, the tray clattering to the floor. The restaurant fell silent for just one impossible second, long enough for every heartbeat in the room to echo in my ears. "I am so sorry, sir," I whispered, grabbing a napkin with shaking hands. "I will fix it right away." The men beside him chuckled quietly, waiting for the show. But Dante did not move. His eyes followed the red stain as it crawled toward the edge of the table. Then slowly he looked up. "It is only wine," he said, his voice low, controlled, and strange. I forced a nervous laugh, trying to wipe the mess while avoiding his gaze. "I will bring you another." He interrupted me without raising his tone. "What is your name?" "Elena," I said before I could stop myself. "Elena." He said it like he was testing the weight of it, like he had spoken that name before. His eyes drifted from my face to the thin silver chain resting against my collarbone. I saw the shift happen. The air around him changed. His expression faltered, just slightly, but enough to make the back of my neck prickle. "That necklace," he said quietly. I looked down, fingers brushing the charm, an old silver pendant shaped like a rose. "It belonged to my mother," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She gave it to me before she passed away." The moment hung there, fragile and heavy. The other men stopped laughing. Even the music seemed to fade. Dante leaned forward, his eyes darkening, not with anger but something far more unsettling. "Where did you say you got it?" he asked. I blinked, confused. "My mother, why?" For a heartbeat, his composure slipped. The man everyone feared suddenly looked human, almost broken. His jaw tightened, as if he was fighting something inside him. "It is nothing," he said at last, pulling back. "Go." I stepped away slowly, unsure whether I should apologize again or run. My heart was still racing when I reached the bar. Marco, another waiter, leaned toward me, whispering urgently. "Are you insane? Do you know who that is?" "I spilled wine, not blood," I said, trying to sound calm, but my voice betrayed me. He shook his head. "Dante Moretti does not forgive mistakes. Stay away from that table." I nodded, though my eyes betrayed me, drifting back toward him. Dante sat perfectly still, the stain before him like a wound that refused to dry. His hand rested on the table, but his gaze never left me. When I returned to clear the empty glasses later, he was gone. The only thing left behind was a folded napkin. For a moment, I thought it was just another tip or careless note. But when I opened it, my breath caught again. In clean, deliberate handwriting were 4 words that changed everything. "We need to talk." I stood there, frozen, the noise of the restaurant fading into a dull hum. My pulse echoed in my ears as I looked toward the door where he had disappeared. I did not understand what had just happened, but one thing was certain. Dante Moretti had recognized something in me, something I did not even know existed. And as I stared at those words written in perfect ink, I felt it deep in my chest. The night was no longer mine. Something had begun, and whatever it was, it would not let me stay invisible anymore. I did not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way he had looked at me, still, silent, and strangely haunted. His eyes had not held anger or superiority like I expected. They had held something else, something I could not name. Fear, maybe. Regret. Whatever it was, it clung to me long after the restaurant closed and the lights went out. By morning, my hands still shook. I tried to tell myself it was just exhaustion. Double shifts, rude customers, and not enough food in my stomach. Simple things that made simple people nervous. But the truth was different. The truth had a name. Dante Moretti. When I arrived at La Vigna the next day, the air felt heavier than usual. Whispers started before I even hung my coat. Marco was behind the counter, polishing glasses with nervous energy. When he saw me, he sighed. "You should have called in sick, Elena." I frowned. "Why? Did something happen?" He lowered his voice. "You spilled wine on the wrong man. Half the city owes him something. The other half fears they will." I forced a laugh I did not feel. "Then I guess I am lucky he only asked for a napkin." Marco looked at me like he was not sure if I was brave or stupid. He is not the kind of man who asks twice. All day, I expected him to walk in again. Every time the door opened, my heart skipped. But he never came. The silence he left behind was worse than any threat could have been. It was not relief I felt, it was confusion. By closing time, I was the last one stacking chairs. The sound of rain tapping against the windows filled the empty dining room. I found myself glancing toward the corner booth where he had sat the night before. The tablecloth had been replaced, the glasses polished, every trace of the accident erased. Still, it felt like his presence lingered there, in the air, in the way my pulse quickened for no reason. Maria, one of the older waitresses, caught me staring. "Forget about him, child," she said, her tone softer than her words. "Men like him notice things they should not. You stay small, quiet. That is how you survive." I nodded, pretending to understand, but I could not shake the feeling that he had not noticed me by accident. There had been recognition in his eyes. Not of me, but of something behind me, beyond me. Like a memory. When the last light flickered out, I finally pulled on my coat. My reflection in the restaurant window startled me. The pendant on my necklace glimmered faintly, catching the glow of the streetlights outside. I touched it without thinking, feeling the cold metal against my skin. For the first time, I wondered who my mother had really been. She had given me the necklace when I was 8, the night before she disappeared. I had never questioned it, never asked why she had been crying, or why she had said, "Whatever happens, this will keep you safe." Safe from what? From who? The wind outside howled through the narrow streets as I locked the restaurant door behind me. I turned the corner toward the bus stop and froze. A black car was parked across the street, engine off, but the faint silhouette of someone inside was visible through the glass. My breath hitched. The windows were tinted, but I could feel it, the same quiet, watchful presence. I told myself it was paranoia, that not every shadow belonged to him. Still, I took the long way home. When I finally reached my apartment, soaked from the rain, I dropped my keys on the counter and sank into a chair. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the napkin again, the one he had left behind. The ink had bled slightly from the spill, but the words were still there. "We need to talk." I stared at those 4 words until they blurred. My instincts screamed to ignore it, to throw it away, to pretend none of it had ever happened. But there was something about the way he had looked at me, like he had seen a ghost. And deep down, I was starting to wonder if that ghost was wearing my mother's necklace. I had promised myself I would forget him. Forget the way his eyes had followed me, the way my heart had betrayed me with that quiet ache of curiosity. But promises are fragile things, and by the 3rd night, mine had already started to break. It was a Thursday, slow and dim. Rain again, whispering against the windows like it had something to say. The smell of roasted garlic and old wine hung in the air, and the world outside felt far away. I was cleaning table 9 when Marco froze mid-step, his face turning pale. "Elena," he whispered, "he's back." I didn't need to ask who. The restaurant seemed to still itself, the clinking of glasses, the low hum of chatter. Everything softened, like even sound was afraid to disturb him. Dante Moretti stepped inside with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to announce danger. Danger followed him in. His dark coat shimmered faintly from the rain, his eyes sharper than I remembered. He didn't look at anyone, not until he reached my section. "Table 12, he said. His voice wasn't a request. It was gravity, pulling me toward him whether I wanted it or not. Marco started to protest. "Mr. Moretti, perhaps." "I asked for her," Dante said, eyes never leaving mine. The silence that followed was heavy, almost physical. My hands went cold, but I nodded. "Of course, sir." When I led him to the corner booth, the same one where the wine had spilled, I realized I was trembling. He noticed, of course. He noticed everything. "You don't have to be afraid," he said quietly, removing his gloves 1 finger at a time. "If I wanted to hurt you, I would have done it that night." Somehow, that didn't make me feel better. I forced a smile. "And if you wanted to scare me?" He looked almost amused. Then I've already succeeded. The words hung there, half threat, half confession. I poured his wine, carefully this time, and set the glass before him. He didn't touch it. He was watching me instead, as if trying to read a language he'd once spoken but had long forgotten. You work here long? He asked. 3 years. Before that, I hesitated. Nowhere important. He tilted his head. You sound like your mother when you say that. My breath caught. He said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. But the air shifted. My heart stumbled. How do you? He interrupted gently, his tone unreadable. She used to say the same thing when people asked where she'd been. Nowhere important. But her eyes always gave her away. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. She worked here. I asked, voice barely steady. No, he said, finally lifting his glass. She used to come here. With me. For a moment, I could not speak. All I could hear was the faint tap of rain against the glass and the echo of my pulse in my ears. He leaned back, studying me. You wear her necklace. I reached up instinctively, fingers brushing the small pendant. You knew her? He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Knew her? He paused, his voice softening. No. I lost her. It wasn't a romantic tone. It was quieter, heavier. A kind of mourning you don't fake. What was she like? I asked before I could stop myself. Dante looked down at his wine, swirling it slowly. She was fire. Soft on the outside, burning underneath. She believed she could save anyone, even me. Something inside me twisted. That line, it sounded like something my mother would have said. I wanted to ask more, but the look on his face warned me not to. He wasn't reminiscing. He was confessing. He reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table, a small silver lighter. Elegant, engraved old. The initials AR shimmered faintly under the light. I found this years ago, he said. Thought I'd buried it with her memory. But seeing you, he exhaled, the mask slipping for a moment. It feels like the past has found me again. The lighter. The initials. Anna Rossi. My mother's name. My stomach turned. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve the truth, he said simply. And because someone else will come looking for it soon. Someone who won't ask as gently. I didn't understand. But I knew that whatever this was, it wasn't over. Before I could ask more, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, his expression darkening, and rose to his feet. Stay away from the waterfront, he said, slipping his gloves back on. If anyone asks about me, you've never seen me. Then he paused. His gaze softened, almost painfully. Your mother wore that same necklace when she left me. And before I could breathe, before I could speak, he was gone, leaving me alone at the table, staring at the lighter between my trembling hands. Outside, thunder rolled through the night. And for the first time in years, I realized my mother's story hadn't ended. It had just returned wearing his name. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, not the coldness people feared, but the flicker beneath it. That quiet, tortured recognition when he looked at my necklace. I could still hear his voice, the way it broke slightly when he said my mother's name. Anna. It felt wrong, hearing it from his lips, as if the past itself had walked through the door and decided I was next. By morning, the restaurant felt foreign. The same chatter, the same steam from the kitchen, but everything had shifted, like the floor had moved an inch under my feet. Marco noticed. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, pouring coffee into my cup. I almost laughed. If only he knew how close he was. He said he knew my mother, I whispered. Marco's hand froze midair. What? He knew her name. He even said she wore this necklace when she left him. He stared at me uneasy. Elena, you should not get involved with that man. People who know Dante Moretti usually end up buried under something heavy. I am not involved with him. I snapped, though even I did not believe it. I just want to understand. Marco sighed. Understanding him will not make you safer. But safety had stopped matching the moment Dante looked at me like he'd seen a ghost he still loved. That evening, after my shift ended, I sat at the bus stop with my jacket pulled tight around me. The streetlights hummed above, the rain from earlier now a faint mist. I turned the silver lighter over in my hand, the one Dante had left behind. The initials AR glinted faintly in the pale light. My mother's initials. I had never seen this before, yet it felt painfully familiar, like something missing from every memory I had of her. When I got home, I opened the old wooden box she used to keep on her dresser, filled with little things she loved, faded letters, an old perfume bottle, a pressed flower from Italy. For years, I could not bring myself to look through it. That night, I needed to. I ran my fingers over a stack of photographs, yellowed at the edges. Most were of her alone, smiling carefree, hair blowing in the wind. But near the bottom of the pile, something stopped me cold. A photograph, older, torn slightly at the corner. It was my mother, younger, laughing. And beside her, unmistakable, even then, was Dante. My pulse spiked, and the air in my lungs turned thin. He was different, no suit, no authority in his stance, just a man with his arm around her waist, smiling like someone who still believed in sunlight. The back of the photo had a date written in my mother's delicate handwriting. Naples, 1999. My mother had told me she went to Italy once before I was born. She said it was for work. She never mentioned the man beside her. My phone buzzed, jolting me back. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Elena. His voice was low, calm, and unmistakably his. My heart tripped over itself. Dante? How did you get my number? You should not have kept the lighter, he said. Someone might think it means something. What does it mean? I demanded. You said you lost her. Lost her how? There was silence. Then a sigh. Some ghosts never die, Elena. They just change their names. I deserve to know the truth, I said, my voice trembling between anger and desperation. Was my mother really in an accident? The silence stretched longer this time, heavy with what he would not say. Go home, he said at last. Lock your doors. And if anyone comes asking about me, you never saw that photograph. My stomach twisted. So it is true. Elena, he murmured, softer now. You think you want the truth, but truth does not heal, it burns. Before I could respond, the line went dead. The room smelled of expensive cologne and old paper. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with leather-bound ledgers, sealed envelopes, and photos framed in glass. The desk was clean, too clean, except for one locked drawer I had seen him open earlier that evening. I did not know what I was looking for. Maybe proof that my mother was just a memory, not a mystery. Maybe proof that Dante had lied. The keys were still in the lock. Careless or deliberate. I did not know. My hand trembled as I turned them. The drawer slid open with a soft click, and that was when I saw it. A thick folder. My mother's name written in neat, cold handwriting across the top. Isabella Conti. My breath caught. Inside were pages stamped with numbers and codes, bank transfers, photographs of people I did not recognize. And then one of her, my mother, standing beside Dante, smiling in a way I had almost forgotten she could. But the next photo stopped my heart. It was her again, standing near a black car. The date scribbled on the back matched the night she disappeared. Beneath it, a single line typed in red ink. Subject vanished during operation. Presumed dead by order. I could not breathe. My mother, ordered dead. By whom? By him. My mind screamed questions, but all I could hear was the faint ticking of the clock above the desk. Looking for something? The voice was low, almost gentle. I froze. When I turned, Dante was standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable, eyes cold enough to burn. The light behind him framed him in shadow, making him seem less man and more ghost. My voice broke. I was not. He walked closer, slow, deliberate, each step echoing off the marble floor. You were not supposed to see that. You kept files on her, I said, my voice shaking. On everything. You tracked her like she was an enemy. His jaw tightened, but his tone remained calm. Because that is what she became. I stared at him, the words striking harder than I was ready for. You loved her. I did, he said softly. And she betrayed me. I felt the room tilt. By leaving. By taking something that did not belong to her, he replied. By running with information that could have destroyed every man in this organization. I gave her a choice, Elena. She made hers. I shook my head, backing away. You are lying. She was not like that. Then explain this, he said, pulling another paper from the drawer. Bank accounts in her name. A flight booked under an alias. And this, he placed it on the desk, his hand steady. A file meant for law enforcement. My mother's handwriting. Her signature. My knees nearly gave out. Dante's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. You think I wanted her dead? He asked quietly. I wanted her back. But she made it impossible. My eyes blurred with tears. So you punished her. I tried to save her, he said, his voice trembling for the first time. You have no idea what happens to those who cross men like me. The order came from above, not from my hand. He reached out as if to touch me, but I stepped back. The distance between us grew heavy with something fragile. Trust breaking under the weight of too many half-truths. "Do you believe me?" he asked. I did not answer. I could not. The folder was still open, my mother's photo staring back, her face full of life, unaware of the word written beneath it. Missing, presumed dead by order. The candlelight flickered as he turned away, his shoulders rigid. I could hear his voice, low and fractured, almost to himself. If I could trade places with her, I would. But the past does not make bargains. I clutched the photo to my chest, my heartbeat echoing in the quiet. I did not know what to believe anymore. Only that every truth I found in his world came dressed as a lie. And as I looked at the words again, presumed dead by order, I realized something terrifying. I needed to know who gave that order. Because if it was not him, then someone else still wanted her gone. And maybe they wanted me next. The night bled into silence, thick and suffocating. I stood by the tall glass windows of Dante's mansion, the city lights flickering like distant ghosts beyond the fog. Behind me, I could hear the soft hum of his voice on the phone, low, measured, dangerous. The same tone he used with everyone who feared him. But I was not afraid anymore. I was furious. When he hung up, he found me still there, clutching the folder I had stolen back from his desk, the one with my mother's name printed across the front. He didn't even look surprised. "You went back," he said quietly. "You left me no choice," I snapped. "You lied to me, Dante." He moved closer, slow, careful, as if I were made of glass about to shatter. "What lie?" "That you cared." My voice cracked. "That any of this meant something. You knew who she was, what she meant to me, and you still—" "I told you the truth I could afford," he interrupted, his voice rising. "The rest would have destroyed you." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "No, Dante. It would have destroyed you." The air between us turned electric, the kind that hums right before a storm. His jaw clenched, his control slipping, but his eyes, they looked tired. Haunted. "You think I killed her," he said flatly. "I don't think," I hissed. "I know. You were there. You had motive. You had power. And now you stand there pretending it was mercy." His expression hardened, then softened, like he was fighting himself. "I didn't kill her, Elena." "Then who did?" I shouted. "Who gave the order?" He hesitated, and that silence was worse than any confession. Because silence, I realized, was his weapon. My hands trembled as I slammed the folder against his chest. "You knew. You let it happen." He caught the papers before they fell, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I didn't kill her, but my silence did." The words hit harder than any bullet. I stared at him, my throat closing, my heart breaking in slow motion. "She begged me to help her," he continued, his eyes glassy with a guilt that looked almost human. "She said she was leaving, that she couldn't live in this world anymore. I thought if I stayed quiet, they'd let her go. But they didn't. They made sure she never came back." I shook my head. "You could have saved her." I thought I was. Something inside me cracked, the last thread of hope I had left. "You don't get to rewrite it like that, Dante. You don't get to call it a mistake when it was murder." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I have paid for it every day since." "Then maybe it's time someone else makes you pay." He flinched, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not of death, but of losing whatever fragile connection we had left. "Elena," he said, stepping closer. "Don't go. Not like this." I backed away until my shoulder hit the doorframe. The mansion felt colder, emptier, like every secret it held was finally breathing. "I can't stay here," I said. "Not with you. Not with what you did." He reached out, but I pulled away. The look in his eyes, raw, desperate, almost made me falter. "Almost. You don't understand," he said softly. "Everything I've done since the night she died, it's been for you." That broke me more than the truth itself. Because love, twisted with guilt, is still poison. "I don't want your protection," I whispered. "I wanted the truth. And you couldn't even give me that." He said my name again, a plea this time, Elena, but it sounded like an echo from another life. I turned toward the door, my pulse roaring in my ears. As I reached for the handle, I looked back one last time. He stood in the middle of that grand, empty room. The devil finally looking like a man who'd lost his soul. "You'll never see me again," I said. And then I left, taking the ghosts, the guilt, and the last of my faith in him with me. Outside, the night was colder than I remembered. The rain started to fall, soft and endless. And for the first time, I realized something cruelly simple. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. It just ruins what little was left of you. The city didn't feel the same anymore. Every sound, every flicker of light in the alley, felt like it was watching me. Since I left Dante's mansion, I had been staying in a small apartment above the restaurant. It wasn't much: cracked tiles, a leaky faucet, and a window that faced the back streets, but it was mine. It felt safe, at least it used to. Now, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out of his world. I started noticing them 3 days ago. A black sedan parked across the street at odd hours. A man pretending to smoke near the corner cafe every morning. Sometimes the same pair of eyes in the crowd, glancing away when I looked up. I told myself it was paranoia, a ghost of his shadow still haunting me. But ghosts don't wear leather jackets and whisper into radios. I hadn't seen Dante since that night. Not a call, not a message. Just silence. And somehow, that scared me more than his presence ever did. By the 4th day, Luca noticed too. He was wiping down the bar when he leaned toward me and whispered, "You've been marked." I froze. "What?" He nodded toward the window where the streetlight flickered. "Those men outside. They're not customers. They've been here all week, sitting in that same car. You think I don't notice things?" I forced a shaky smile. "Maybe they're just. Don't." His voice was firm, low. "You walked away from the wrong man, Elena. And now someone else wants to know why he let you." The air left my lungs. "You think this is Dante's doing?" He shook his head. "No. If it were him, you'd never see them coming. These guys? They're sloppy. Which makes them worse." I gripped the counter to steady myself. "What do they want?" Luca glanced around, then leaned closer. "Word is, one of Dante's rivals found out who you are. What your mother was. They think you know something." I swallowed hard. "I don't. Doesn't matter," he said. "They don't need proof, just an excuse." The restaurant felt smaller suddenly, the shadows deeper. The same corner booth where Dante once sat now looked like a trap. That night, I double-checked the locks before going to bed. My phone buzzed twice, an unknown number, no message. I turned it face down on the nightstand and tried to breathe. But the quiet was unbearable. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside, felt like footsteps getting closer. I thought about calling Dante, and instantly hated myself for it. After everything, I still wanted to believe he would protect me. But protection from him was just another kind of prison. I went to the window, half expecting to see that black car again. The street looked empty. Too empty. Then a flash. A sound so sharp and violent it split the night in half. The window shattered, glass exploding inward, scattering across the floor. I ducked instinctively, heart pounding. Breath caught somewhere between a scream and silence. The bullet had torn through the curtain and buried itself in the wall, just above my bed. For a long time, I couldn't move. I just sat there, shaking, shards glittering like diamonds in the moonlight. They knew where I lived. And whoever had pulled that trigger wasn't sending a warning. They were finishing a job. Outside, the night went still again, but I could feel eyes watching from the darkness beyond the streetlight. And in that moment, I understood the truth I'd been running from. Leaving Dante didn't save me from his world. It only made me visible to all the monsters he used to keep away. I did not sleep that night. The bullet hole in the wall stared back at me like an unblinking eye. A silent reminder that running had never been an escape, only a delay. By dawn, the adrenaline had faded into a hollow ache inside my chest. I packed what little I owned, a few clothes, my mother's locket, and the broken pieces of the life I once thought I could rebuild, and walked out before the sun had fully risen. The streets were cold and damp, mist curling over the cobblestones. Every echo of footsteps behind me felt like a countdown. I did not know where else to go. All I knew was that the one man I had sworn to stay away from was now the only one who could keep me alive. Dante. The name felt heavy in my mouth, like a curse and a prayer at the same time. When I reached the tall iron gates of his estate, I almost turned back. 2 of his guards recognized me immediately. The shorter one hesitated, then lifted his radio. "She's here," he said quietly. Moments later, the gate opened with a low groan, and I stepped inside the lion's den I thought I had escaped forever. The mansion looked different in daylight, less like a kingdom, more like a fortress. The black marble floors reflected the morning light like a blade. Every surface gleamed, but the air felt colder than I remembered. He was waiting for me at the end of the hall, standing near the staircase in a dark vest and open-collar shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. For a moment, he just looked at me, his eyes unreadable, his jaw tight. "I heard," he said quietly. "The window. The bullet. I exhaled, trembling slightly. So your people are still watching me. He stepped closer. I have been watching everyone, Elena. But whoever did this, they slipped past my line. I met his gaze, forcing the words out. I had nowhere else to go. Something in his expression softened, but only for a second. You should never have left, he said, his voice low. You were safer here. Safe? I almost laughed. Safe in your world of lies and shadows? He stared at me, silent. Then, in a voice rougher than I remembered, he said, You hate me, but I will die before I let them touch you. His words landed like a blow, not because of their meaning, but because of the truth buried inside them. He meant it. I could hear it in the way his voice cracked at the edge of control. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, he turned and gestured toward the corridor. Come. You will stay in the East Wing. No one will enter without my order. I am not staying here forever, I said. He gave a faint, humorless smile. No one stays forever. Not even me. That evening, the house came alive again. Footsteps, radios, hushed voices. His men were everywhere. I sat by the window of the guest room, watching the security lights flicker in the garden below. It felt like being inside a cage with gold bars. But the truth was, for the first time in days, I wasn't scared. Not of the dark, at least. Only of what I still felt when I saw him. Near midnight, there was a knock. Dante entered without waiting for an answer. We found him, he said. My heart stopped. Who? The shooter. I stood up, my pulse racing. You caught him. He nodded, his eyes shadowed. He will talk. I followed him down to the basement corridor, colder, quieter. The air smelled of metal and rain. 2 of his men stood guard at a steel door. Dante opened it, and inside, a man sat bound to a chair, bruised and shaking. His face was familiar, one of the men I had seen near the restaurant. Dante's voice was calm, almost too calm. Who sent you? The man spat blood onto the floor and mumbled. You should ask your own family that. The room went silent. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears. What did you say? Dante asked, his tone lowering. The man smiled weakly, his eyes darting toward me. It was not the rivals. Not the streets. It came from inside. Someone close to you, someone who wants her gone. For the first time since I had known him, Dante's composure cracked. His jaw tightened, and he turned away, pressing a hand against the wall as if to stop himself from breaking it. He dismissed his men, his voice barely steady. Get him out of my sight. As they dragged the man away, Dante looked at me, the fire in his eyes replaced by something colder, older. This house, he said quietly, was built on loyalty. But it seems the rot has started inside. I wanted to speak, to ask what he meant, but his gaze silenced me. He stepped closer, his voice almost a whisper. You are not safe anywhere, Elena. Not even here. And in that moment, I understood what he was really afraid of. Not the men outside his gates, but the ghosts living within them. Somewhere among his own blood and brothers, someone wanted me dead. The night the truth came out, the house was silent, too silent, as if it was holding its breath. The air itself felt heavy, thick with something unspoken that was finally ready to surface. I sat in the study, staring at the flames twisting inside the fireplace, waiting for Dante to return. He had been gone for hours since the interrogation, leaving me alone with the ghosts of questions I wasn't ready to face. When he finally walked in, his eyes looked older, not tired but burdened. There was blood on his sleeve, faint but visible, and he didn't bother to hide it. He poured a drink, swallowed it without a word, and set the glass down with a sharp clink that shattered the silence. Tell me, I said quietly. He didn't look up. You do not want to hear it. I have lived my whole life surrounded by lies. I deserve the truth. He lifted his gaze to mine, dark, hollow, and honest for the first time. It was my brother. My stomach twisted. Your brother? He nodded slowly. He gave the order. Your mother was involved in things she should never have been. She worked with us once, as an accountant, helping move money through clean channels. But when she realized what that money was funding, the guns, the blood, the trafficking, she tried to pull out. His voice broke, just slightly. And when she found out she was pregnant, she ran. The room blurred around me. My breath caught in my throat. She was protecting me. Yes, he said softly. She wanted you out of this world. Away from us. Away from me. The fire crackled, casting his face in flickering amber light. My brother saw it as betrayal. In his eyes, anyone who runs with knowledge that dangerous is a threat. He gave the order to silence her. Tears welled up before I could stop them. And you, what did you do? He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. I disobeyed him. I found her before they did. I tried to get her out of the city, but she refused to leave until she knew you were safe. That night, we were ambushed. I could barely speak. So she died because of him? He nodded once. Because of him, and because I was not strong enough to stop it. The words hung between us like smoke. My knees weakened, and I gripped the edge of the table to stay upright. All those years I'd spent hating him, for secrets, for silence. I hadn't realized he'd been carrying the same pain. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Because the man who ordered it is still my brother, he said, his tone breaking with quiet rage. And because the moment I told you, you would become his target. My tears fell freely now, anger and grief twisting together. So you lied to me to protect me? He looked at me, eyes red-rimmed. I lied to protect what was left of her. Something inside me cracked then, not in anger, but in understanding. For the first time, I saw not the feared Mafia boss everyone whispered about, but a man haunted by a single mistake that destroyed everything he ever loved. I took a step toward him. You could have told me sooner. I should have, he said. But every time I looked at you, I saw her. And I could not bear to watch her ghost hate me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The firelight danced between us. Two people caught in the same grief, divided by years of silence. Then the door burst open. One of his guards stumbled in, breathless, pale. Sir, he's here. Dante turned sharply. Who? The guard's voice trembled. Your brother. Everything froze. Dante's glass shattered on the floor. He grabbed his gun from the desk, chambered a round with steady hands, and whispered, Get her to the East Hall. Now. But before the guards could move, another voice echoed from the doorway, low, cruel, and familiar in its confidence. I see you found her, the man said. He looked like Dante, same sharp jawline, same cold eyes, but where Dante's presence carried control, his brother's was poison. He stepped into the light with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I always wondered what was so special about the woman who ruined you, he said, gaze sliding toward me. Now I see. She looks just like her mother. Dante raised his gun. Leave. His brother laughed softly. You should have let me finish the job 20 years ago. Now I will. The room seemed to spin. My pulse roared in my ears. And as Dante moved to shield me, his brother's smile widened. The smile of a man who had already decided how this would end. The war between blood and love had finally come to the surface, and I was standing in the crossfire. The world burned around us, literally. The warehouse was an inferno, flames devouring the walls, glass bursting from the heat. Smoke choked the air, turning every breath into fire. Somewhere beneath the roar, I could hear gunfire, sharp, rhythmic, terrifyingly close. We had come here to end it. Dante's brother had taken everything. His power, his people, and now he wanted to erase what was left, me. The air reeked of gasoline and gunpowder. The metal beams groaned above us, threatening to collapse. Dante's voice cut through the chaos. Stay behind me. I wanted to obey, but fear had already burned itself out. I had lost too much to hide again. No, I said. This ends tonight. He looked at me, soot across his face, blood staining his shirt, and for a moment, I saw something like pride flicker in his eyes. You sound like her, he whispered. We moved together through the smoke. Every step echoed against the concrete floor. Every shadow could have been death. Men shouted, bullets ricocheted off steel, and somewhere ahead, a door slammed shut. Dante raised his gun, motioning for silence. His brother's voice drifted through the haze. You brought her here? After all these years, you still do not know how to let go. Dante's jaw tightened. I should have killed you when you touched her name. A mocking laugh followed. You had your chance. But love makes men weak, and you have always been weak, brother. The heat grew unbearable. Sparks rained down like dying stars as we stepped into the main hall. Once a shipping floor, now a burning cage. His brother stood there, calm amid the destruction, gun in hand, smoke curling around him like a crown. He pointed the weapon at me. The daughter. The mistake. Dante moved faster than thought, firing 2 shots that slammed into the steel beside his brother's head. You touch her, he said, and I will burn this world to the ground. I could barely hear them over the flames, but I could feel it, the history between them, thick with hate, love, and blood. I moved closer to him. His eyes followed me, weary, tender, full of something I had never seen there before. Do you hate me? He asked quietly. I shook my head. No, I just finally see you. He closed his eyes, exhaling like the weight of years had just slipped from his chest. I leaned forward, pressing the necklace into his hand. "This belonged to my mother," I said, my voice steady even as my heart broke. "But it also belonged to your past. Everything between us, the lies, the pain, the blood, it lives there too." He opened his eyes, confusion flickering through them. "What are you saying?" I placed the necklace on his chest, right over the bandage. "I'm saying goodbye." He reached for me, weak but desperate. "Elena." I stopped him with a touch to his hand. "You told me once that love makes men weak. You were wrong. Love makes us human. And for a moment you were." His fingers tightened around mine, but I gently pulled away. The chain glimmered against his skin like a final truth, a bridge between who we were and who we could never be again. "I'm walking toward my future," I whispered. "You should do the same." Then I turned toward the door. The first light of dawn brushed against my face, warm and forgiving. Behind me, I heard him whisper my name, soft, like a prayer he wasn't sure he deserved. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. I never wrote the letter to send it. I wrote it because silence felt too heavy to carry anymore. The paper was thin, hotel stationery from some nameless town miles away from the city that once defined me. The ink smudged where my hand trembled. It had been weeks since I left, but his voice still lived somewhere behind my ribs, whispering things I wasn't ready to forget. "Dante," I began. Then I stopped. The name alone could set fire to my heartbeat. The world outside my window was gentle now, nothing like the one I'd escaped. People walked their dogs, children laughed. The bakery downstairs opened early enough to fill the air with warmth instead of smoke. It was peace. Ordinary, imperfect peace. And yet, I still caught myself listening for his footsteps in the dark. I wrote, "You once told me that love makes us weak. I think you were half right. Love makes us see everything, the truth, the pain, the cost. And when you see too much, it's hard to stay blind again." I paused, remembering the warehouse, the fire, the smell of gasoline and blood. The way he reached for me even as the world collapsed around us. There was nothing weak in that moment, only a kind of courage that looked like surrender. I folded the paper once, then unfolded it again. My hands wouldn't stay still. "I used to think you were the villain in my story," I wrote, "but maybe you were just the mirror I needed, the one that showed me how far I'd fallen, and how badly I wanted to rise again." The necklace was gone now. I left it where it belonged, on his chest, glinting in the dawn. I didn't take souvenirs from that life. Just the lessons, the scars, and the faintest echo of his voice saying my name like it meant something sacred. I could still see the look in his eyes that morning. Not pain, not regret, but something in between. A quiet acceptance. Maybe he knew, even then, that I wasn't coming back. The hotel room smelled of salt and coffee. A single suitcase sat by the door, the only proof I had of a new beginning. I thought about throwing the letter away, but part of me needed it. Needed the closure that words, even unsent, could offer. "You taught me that ghosts aren't always dead people," I wrote next. "Sometimes they're memories, the kind that refuse to let go until you make peace with them." I let out a slow breath, folding the letter one last time. It was never meant for him. Maybe one day I'd burn it. Or maybe I'd keep it, hidden between the pages of some forgotten book, like a secret I had finally made peace with. The train station wasn't far. I could hear the low hum of departure in the distance, steel wheels promising motion, direction, escape. But I didn't feel like I was running anymore. I was just leaving. As I locked the door behind me, I whispered to the empty room, "Goodbye, Dante." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't bitter. It was quiet, like the end of a song that had played too long but still left something beautiful behind. The days turned into weeks, then months. The city's name faded from my tongue. My dreams became lighter. I started to smile at strangers again, to breathe without waiting for the next shadow. Then one morning, while passing a small cafe in the next town over, I overheard two men talking. "Did you hear? Dante Moretti's gone. No one knows where." I froze mid-step. My coffee trembled in my hand. "Vanished," the other said. "His men say he left everything. No trace. Like he just walked off the earth." I didn't turn around. I didn't ask questions. I just stared at the rising sun reflected in the cafe window and felt something inside me unclench. Not grief, not relief, just stillness. Maybe he finally found his own peace. Maybe disappearing was his way of saying goodbye. I walked away before the tears could reach my eyes. The train whistle echoed across the horizon, and for the first time in a long while, I felt free. Not from him, but from the story we shared. Some love stories end in fire. Ours ended in silence. And maybe that's the only kind of ending that ever lets you begin again. It has been a year since the fire. A year since I last heard his voice. A year since I placed the necklace, her necklace, on his chest and walked away. They say time dulls everything. But time doesn't dull the truth. It only teaches you how to live with it. How to hold pain gently until it stops burning. I live by the sea now. A small town where no one knows my name, where the waves speak louder than the ghosts in my mind. Mornings here begin with salt in the air and wind in my hair, and for the first time in years, I don't wake up afraid. The restaurant I work in is nothing like the one I left behind. There's laughter in the kitchen, not whispers. The people are kind, the kind of kind that doesn't expect anything in return. Sometimes, when the bell above the door rings, my heart still jumps, an echo of old habits, but it passes quickly now. Healing is strange. It doesn't happen in grand moments. It's quiet. It's making coffee without shaking hands. It's realizing the silence doesn't hurt anymore. It's hearing his name in my thoughts and feeling gratitude instead of grief. I used to think love was supposed to save us. Now I know it's supposed to change us. Sometimes, at night, I walk along the pier when the tide is high and the world feels suspended in silver light. That's when I talk to him, not out loud, but in the language of memory. I tell him I'm okay, that I found peace, that I hope, wherever he is, the ghosts have stopped chasing him too. There are things I'll never understand, why he protected me, why he stayed silent for so long, why fate wove us together just to pull us apart. But maybe understanding isn't the point. Maybe it's enough that, for a moment, two broken people found something that almost looked like love. Sometimes the ones who break us also teach us how to heal. That thought comes to me often, when I see the sunset over the water, when the wind moves through the grass the way his hands once moved through my hair. It doesn't ache anymore. It just reminds me. I've forgiven him. But more importantly, I've forgiven myself, for staying too long, for leaving too late, for loving someone I was never meant to keep. One evening, I stay late after closing. The sea is restless, the air heavy with the promise of rain. I sit outside the cafe with a cup of tea growing cold between my hands. The world feels both infinite and small. Across the street, a figure walks by, tall, coat collar turned up against the wind. I almost don't look twice, until the light from a street lamp catches something at his throat. A glint of gold. My breath falters. The chain. The same one I left behind on his chest that morning. Unmistakable, even through the blur of dusk. The man doesn't look my way. He keeps walking, his silhouette dissolving into the fog that drifts in from the sea. For a long time, I just sit there, my heart still, not racing, not breaking. Just still. Maybe it wasn't him. Or maybe it was. Either way, I don't follow. I don't call out. I don't need to. Because love, real love, doesn't always return in flesh and blood. Sometimes it lives on in the wind, in the tide, in the quiet spaces between one heartbeat and the next. I lift my face toward the breeze, close my eyes, and let it move through me. The wind smells faintly of smoke and salt, like memory, like forgiveness, like him. If he's out there, I hope he knows I remember. Not the violence, not the fear, but the truth we carved out of all that darkness. The truth that we both tried to become better than the people the world made us. The waves crash below, the gulls cry above, and the sky turns the color of bruised gold. Somewhere in that wind, I swear I hear his voice, low, steady, unbroken. Elena, it's not a haunting. It's a goodbye. I smile. Just once. Just enough. And as the first drops of rain begin to fall, I whisper into the wind, I know. The world fades into mist, soft, endless, forgiving. And the necklace, glinting faintly in the distance, disappears into the light. Fade to black.